Hi, I'm Kezia, stroke survivor and a member of Bind.
And hi, I'm Carrie, stroke survivor and a Bind member as well. And today, welcome to Aphasia Part 1. This is the beginning of our first mini-series. We're going to focus on aphasia since it affects so many brain injury survivors. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into what that is. And for those of you that don't know what aphasia is a language disorder that affects a person's ability to communicate in multiple different ways. Today, we're going to focus on just kind of one person's, and then we're going to get into someone else, and then we're going to get a speech therapist in here that gets a little more detailed, and we'll go from there. So welcome.
Today we are going to welcome our guest, Karl K. You may also remember him from the first season when he came into Bindwaves to share his stroke story. This time we are going to be digging deeper, like Carrie just said, and be talking about his struggle and his triumph with aphasia. Thank you so much, Karl, and thank you for being here.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Welcome to Bindwaves, the official podcast of the Brain Injury Network of Dallas. I'm Brian White, Bind's Executive Director. On each episode, we'll be providing insight into the brain injury community. We'll be talking to members and professionals regarding their stories and the important role of Bind's Clubhouse. We work as a team to inspire hope, community, and a sense of purpose to survivors, caregivers, and the public. Thank you for tuning into Bindwaves. Let's get on with the show.
Okay, so can you tell us what type of aphasia you're affected by, and explain to all the listeners and to us, what does that look like and what does that mean?
Well, when I had the stroke, it affected the left side of the brain. And so it had to do with language. And what happens is that you will see people who have trouble reading and speaking and writing. And what's interesting is this has nothing to do with intelligence at all.
Of course. Dr. Karl.
Dr. Karl.
Sorry about that.
So, Karl, when in your recovery process were you informed that you had aphasia? And was it explained to you in a way that you understood it? Or did it take you, longer to understand it?
The first month that I was in the hospital, all we did was work with sounds. And it was very difficult. I didn't do very well. Then when I moved to PATE rehab, what happened is that we worked on more conflict speech. And so that's when I started looking to what is aphasia and how does it work and that sort of thing. So that all came from PATE. And then I was there for 6 months every day. And then I went to rehab in Medicis Hospital. And I did there for about 4 months. And then the government decided that I was good. So they were done. I didn't start I was done, but they thought I was. So
Exactly.
Yeah. And right now that you were talking about rehabilitation and all the places that you were at, how were you focusing on your speech and also the effects that you had with aphasia? Like, what are some of the activities that they were giving you, and like how did it help you learn about aphasia?
Well, one of the things we did, I'll never forget this, was we did the months of the year and the days of the week. And it was very difficult to do, but we did it so many times, I can do it now. And I did a lot of those things like that. But also we worked on sentences and so forth, and trying to do basically things that in conversation that you have the ability to say. However, what happens is that because they had a brain injury, problem is that they will pause and they will try it again and they'll try it again, and then they try to make up words that doesn't work, and it takes time to do all that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I know. And that's, you're saying do it again, do it again, do it again. That is key to all therapy and rehabilitation is repetition, repetition, repetition. None of us like it, but we all get it. As the other Karl says was, if we knew how to do it, they wouldn't make us do it. So kind of true. And I know that you still do a lot to work on your aphasia. So what are the kind of things that you do at home now that you said, like you said, the government decided, insurance decided, we're not going to pay you anymore, you're fine. But you know that you still have work to do. So what do you do, like on a daily, weekly basis, whatever? I know you read a lot.
Well, one thing was I had the blessing to teach aphasia, and I did that for 6 months. And we did twice a week, and it was very good. I really enjoyed learning it, and only problem we ever had is people were afraid that they don't have aphasia, so why go? And we're trying to do other things that they might like and enjoy. So one of the problems that I'm having right now is there's no one that I can read to. And I'm supposed to be reading out loud, and I've done things like on the microphones and phone and stuff, but it just doesn't work. And so I'm still looking for somebody who can read with me and check things out and so forth, and it's there's nobody to do it.
I'm just curious, just random thought. Have you checked with any local libraries if they have volunteers or someone that you might be able to do that with?
I've tried several times to get volunteers who are retired. And I really thought I was going to have 2 of them. And then what happened was they said that they had no knowledge of computers and so forth. They don't do email or anything like that. So I would have been there if they do it, but they're just not literate in computer stuff.
Yeah, but I think that's a great idea because like you said earlier, and because of our first season that we were able to share your stroke story, like you were professor before and when you had the stroke, and then now you're using that same skill, that same knowledge that doesn't get affected by a stroke, and then now you're trying to work on it through reading out loud to somebody. That's amazing. Like hearing you out in all of those situations that you're using to heal and work on yourself. That's really, really good. I actually, because of the time that we've met each other on Zoom and all these different platforms, that's actually what I actually have a difficulty with. I can speak, like here I am on the podcast, but it's the reading part that's very hard and to comprehend and hold on to it. And you're like the backwards, like you can read forever. I don't know, how many books do you read a day or a year?
Let's see, I know I do 4 to 5 every month.
Yeah, that's wild. I can barely read one. So yeah, but that's really, we're like the opposite. And I think that's awesome advice to others about like how to continue working on yourself and your current skills and your skills that you're never going to lose. So thank you for that. So I know that right now, what are some things that you've been feeling like you've had like a lot of progress on, or what you think that are you still having some issues that you're still working on a lot?
Well, one thing I've been doing is I'm teaching Sunday school again. And
cool.
So that puts me in front of people. And I also enjoyed going to the paid people for here at Bind, and also University of Dallas, Texas. I did that, and so every chance I could possibly speak, that's what I tried to do. And I'll tell you quickly, what's funny is that it's a lot difficult than it used to be, because at this time, I'm not supposed to sound good. In other words, I had a stroke, and so what happens is that the fact is that they don't want to be perfect. They don't want me to be perfect. They want me to talk like a person who has a stroke, and so that happened all the time. And I like that. As a result of that, there's no pressure.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, there's no pressure, but I think because of the ongoing testing that you've done, not testing, but ongoing progress that you've had so far from all your experiences. I think one time I met you, you said like I'm at 75%, right? 75% you. That's pretty cool. I think you're even better now. So it's been sounding like you've been having a great progress.
Yeah, it's good. And we're just talking about, all the different things that you're doing to keep up with, your reading. And that's one of the questions the members had for us, which is a question that I've never thought about. So I don't know. But are you prescribed any medication that helps with aphasia? Or have you ever heard of anything like that?
No, I take a lot of pills.
Well, I mean, I do too, but that's why. But I didn't think you had to. I mean, I guess that would be nice if there was a pill for aphasia. Then there would probably be a pill for Alzheimer's and dementia. So maybe you can design that. Go to work on
wonderful. Absolutely. I'll be rich.
Yes, there you go. Share it with me.
Right. Also, I think we're on going into these questions that we've had from listeners and followers. Another one actually I was asked, and I was like, do I ask this one? Like, what does this mean?
Yeah, we were confused with this
but
one.
I do think that it's good to ask because, a lot of people don't hear about aphasia. And right now they're hearing from someone that gets affected by it or has had an affection by it through the stroke. But does having aphasia affect any kind of safety, like within you, yourself, or other people? Does it affect any kind of safety?
Like your safety, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Safe. What happens is if you don't communicate well, and you're telling somebody to, go to this door or go to the right or something like that, and you can't say it, that is very safe issues. I mean, it really is. Absolutely.
Yeah. Right now, I think that's right now that you're talking about saying right. And while you're driving and stuff, I think that's why I might be the worst. What is it when you're the one that's sitting next to the driver?
Co-pilot.
I'm the worst co-pilot. I mean to say right, and I think I said left without realizing it. So I might be the worst one. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. Yes, that's a safety matter. So thank you for sharing that one.
Yeah, and I think, Carl, I'm not gonna say I know. I think in the beginning with your aphasia, you were having more difficulty just speaking in general. So what kind of tools, if you were having issues with your speech, what other kind of tools did you use to be able to communicate with your therapist or with your daughters?
Yeah, the whole thing was trying to be conversational. And one of the things that they decided to do is don't read so much. Turns out I did something else later. But at that time they said, we want to paraphrase everything, make everything in your own words. And I had two therapists who did that. And frankly, it was a lot easier for me because I can use my own words. Only place it didn't work was at church because they don't want my words. They want the Bible says words. So anyway, so it didn't quite work.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you got to do the right thing in the right place. That makes sense. I get that.
It really does. And before we go on to the next question, I just want to make sure to remind all of our listeners and our followers that if you ever would like to contact us, to email us at bindwaves@thebind.org, and make sure to continue connecting to us every Thursday. All right. So I think we have some more wondering kind of questions, Karl. So tell us, I know that you mentioned it a little bit about you going to different areas to talk about aphasia and the stroke survivor story and everything, but tell us a lot about how you have found a purpose into sharing and giving other people, other survivors and caregivers hope by educating them about aphasia.
When we go to PATE, frankly, they are all down. I feel like most of them don't really want to be there, and they do not have hope. So one of the things that we do through Bind is give hope to people. Yeah. And so when I do my speech at PATE, I try to focus on hope. And there's other things you can think about than how bad you are and how much trouble it's been and all that sort of thing. If you have hope, it turns around everything. And so that's what we try to do. And I do that all the time when I talk with people, and they talk about how it hurts so much and things aren't working anymore and so forth, and trying to get something, get you up about it and so forth. So it's tough to especially with a group, y'all, to try to get hope, but they just don't want it, don't like it,
Right. No, and I know, and that's for our listeners. I mean, I know we go out and talk to different rehabs. One is PATE, and so those are pretty much brand new stroke survivors, brain injury survivors, whether it be TBI or whatever. So there is, it's a little bit more down. You're still in the clinical setting. But as most of you know, our brand promise here at Bind is hope, purpose, and community. So that kind of covers all of our bases right there, where our purpose is to go out to the community and provide hope to new survivors. And that's part of the podcast, too, is to educate our community about what we're going through and how things help brain-injured survivors or affect us, and what you can do to just be a little bit kinder and nicer to brain injury, because like Karl said earlier, it doesn't affect our intelligence. It may sound like it affects our intelligence, but it doesn't really affect our just kind of saying that, Karl. So what would you like our listeners to know about how they should treat someone with aphasia if they meet someone that's talking a little slower or has aphasia?
That's very important, because the issue is that they're trouble to say the words, and they typically pause, and then what happens is they try it again and try it again, like I said a few minutes ago, and then what they're trying to do then is get new words. And it gets very frustrating. I mean, it really is. Especially you can see people who have on their lips are going, and they just can't say these words. And it's very hard to do that. Same thing is also with people who they squit sounds, and they also have words that they make up. It's that's one way they communicate, and you have to have patience. And I would just say, which I've done many times here, I've never seen, and our staff has the most patient people I've ever seen. I don't know how they do it. I don't know what they do out town or when they're out of their own time and so forth, but they may hit the wall. I don't know what they do, but there's great patience to our staff, and it's just wonderful. I know people really appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that right now that you were talking about like how we get stuck on certain words or say the wrong words, just to be a little bit more personal, do you know when that happens when you're speaking? Like, do you know when you probably said the wrong word?
Oh, sure. Where do you want to start? Absolutely. And one of the things that I try to do is after I try a word and it doesn't work, I ask somebody else to say something, and then what happens is I say, I'm glad you're here, because I can't say it, but they can. So that's what I try to do.
That's pretty smart, yeah.
I think one time I was like having a conversation with one of my friends, and they were like, talking to you is kind of like playing, not categories, like one of those games, because I know I can't say the word. Like, I know I have I'm going to say the wrong word, and I know that's the wrong word. So I'm going to be like, I'm talking about, it starts with a K, and it's like, that what you use, like, I don't know. I can't think of it right now. But, I know I can't say it. So I'm kind of describing it first, then saying the letter that I know it starts with, having what category does that fall in, to have my way of asking help. And as I say that out loud, that letter will come in. I'm like, oh, yeah, I was talking about this,
Well, remember that also when people have aphasia, what happens is there are other ways to communicate, like drawing something, pointing people, and that sort of thing. So if they don't have the words, there's still other ways you can communicate.
Sure.
Yeah, of course.
And I know for you, because I know one of the members that we have here at Bind, that I used to ask him, because we'd be in the car riding together, and he'd be trying to tell us a story, and he was very limited on his words, and he would say things, and Karl and I, the other Karl, would be like this, just throwing things out. And finally we went, Steve, does that bother you when we do that? Do you want us to just shut up and let you try to say it? And then when you want help, you'll tell us you want help? And he very profoundly said, yes. No questions asked, that he had the correct word. So I think that's another good point for our listeners to know is don't try to help the person come up with what they're trying to say unless they're asking you to help them. Like Karl said, he kind of does it and then says, thank you, I'm glad you're here. But for some people, it's a little more frustrating to just be like, and when they pause, that doesn't mean they're waiting for you to then tell them what they said. They're rethinking what they're trying to say. Is that right? Does that sound good?
That is correct, yes.
I say all that, and fortunately was not affected with aphasia, but because of my work with Bind for so long, I've know a lot of people with aphasia, so I have a lot of different knowledge about it. No technical knowledge, just how I work with my friends. And
yeah, I definitely agree. And I think that it's kind of weird. I don't know if it's weird, but it's just very interesting after having had a stroke. Like, I am so interested in like everything that has to do with my brain and other people's brains. Like, it's so interesting. And same thing with aphasia. And I think that's how I believe about you, also, Karl, is just like how you got affected by aphasia and you know so much and you're always like researching about it and want to know more about it and help other people. So honestly, thank you so much for being here and doing that on the podcast and continuing to do that like on a weekly basis, even with like people that don't have any affection to it. So thank you so much, Karl.
Yeah, we really appreciate you being here today and joining us, Karl. For all of you listening, if you want to ask Karl questions or have more, just kind of want to know more about aphasia in general, you can also you can send an email to Karl here at our info@thebind.org. That way that we can make sure that we get that question specifically to Karl. And we'll make sure that all the guest information is on our episode's descriptions and resources as well.
And if you would like to contact us, the hosts of Bindwaves, you can send an email to us at bindwaves@thebind.org, and we will be available to answer any of your questions.
And don't forget to hit the like button, the share button, the subscribe button, and if you're on YouTube, the notify button. All those buttons that you got to click to make sure we know you're listening and you're liking us. And don't forget to share, too.
And you can find us on all of your favorite platforms.
Thank you for listening. Until next time. We hope you've enjoyed listening to Bind Waves and continue to support Bind and our nonprofit mission.
We support brain injury survivors as they reconnect into the life, the community, and their workplace.
And we couldn't do that without great listeners like you. We appreciate each and every one of you. Continue watching. Until next time.
Until next time.